Today we're sharing a family favorite with you from my new book, The Modern Pioneer Cookbook. It's an old-fashioned cinnamon graham cracker recipe. Hi, sweet friends. I'm Mary, and this is my sweet son, Ben.
Hi, sweet friends.
And welcome to Mary's Nest, where we teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods, like bone broth, ferment, sourdough,
and more.
So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel. And don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. If at any time you want to jump ahead in this video, be sure to check the description or the pinned comment below where I'll have detailed timestamps. Well, here's the recipe for graham crackers in my cookbook, and that's what we're going to make right now, and so let's go over all the ingredients. Now, in the recipe in my cookbook, I call for 2 cups of graham flour or whole wheat flour. So know that you can definitely use whole wheat flour to make graham crackers, and whole wheat flour may be a lot easier for you to find. All that graham flour is basically whole wheat flour that has a coarser grain to it, a coarser grind. And the technique was developed by a man named Sylvester Graham, hence the name graham flour. Now, if you keep wheat berries on hand in your pantry, and you want to grind those on a very coarse grind, maybe using your mock mill that you've often seen me use, you can definitely create something that's very similar to graham flour. But today, many graham crackers are made with whole wheat flour, as we're going to make these today. And these are going to be very similar to what you would buy at the grocery store, just better, because we're making them with whole sweeteners and not a lot of white sugar. So as I said, the ingredients are pretty basic. We've got 2 cups of whole wheat flour. Next, you're going to want a 1/3 cup of a whole sweetener. And now specifically in my cookbook, I call for unrefined whole cane sugar. Now you may know that simply as that, unrefined whole cane sugar. You may also see it sold under names, which I think you've probably heard me say a lot, sucanat.
Oh, yes, yes.
And you may also see it sold as rapadura, depending on where you live in the world. But don't worry if you don't have this type of sweetener in your traditional foods kitchen yet. A lot will depend where you are on your journey. And if you're still at the very beginning of your journey and all you have is white sugar, the typical white sugar that most of us will have in a modern day kitchen, you can use that in this recipe. But as you travel farther down the continuum on your journey to creating your traditional foods kitchen, try to incorporate a whole sweetener like sucanat or rapadura. Alternatively, you can also use sweeteners like maple sugar. It'll give it a little bit of a different taste, but that works very well. You can use coconut sugar, you can use date sugar. All of these alternative sweeteners that are whole sweeteners are perfect when making baked goods like this. Next, you're going to need a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. Now, if you don't like cinnamon, you can definitely leave it out of this recipe, but I highly recommend it. Next, you're going to need a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/4 teaspoon of fine ground salt. I've got a fine ground sea salt here, but you can certainly use whatever you have. Next, you're going to want 1 stick of cold butter. That's equal to a 1/2 cup of butter. Next, you're going to need a 1/3 cup of pourable honey. You don't want creamed honey for this recipe. You want something that pours very easily. And then finally, you're just going to need some vanilla extract. And this is actually a homemade vanilla extract, and the recipe to make this is also in my cookbook. And then all I've got here is some whole milk. You may need a little bit of this because we may need to moisten the dough. It's very important that we create a very malleable dough. Now, the only other ingredients that you're going to need are actually a little bit of white sugar and some cinnamon and a little bit of milk. This is just for brushing on the cookies at the very end before they go into the oven. And the reason why we're using a little bit of white sugar is if we use the rapadura or the sucanat, it can tend to burn. So I find that just using a little bit of white sugar to dust the cookies, to give them that nice cinnamon sugar topping, the little bit of white sugar we're going to use works perfectly. Well, Ben's going to put in all of the dry ingredients and then whisk them together. And and I'm going to just cut up this butter. We just want to cut it up into cubes because you'll see what we're going to do with it and how we'll go ahead and add it into the dry ingredients. So do you remember your many memories of eating graham crackers?
At Grandma's house, she'd make a very similar recipe to this. And one of my favorite things, graham crackers, ice pops, and lima beans were the three things I remember most about eating at Grandma's house. Always a good time.
That was very cute that my mother, Benjamin, always had memories like when he was in high school, he would say, "Oh, Mom, I just think it's so cute that whether I'm 3 or 13, 14, it doesn't matter. The first thing Grandma will say, right?
When you want an ice pop?
You want an ice during the, it's hot. We live in Central Texas. It's hot many months of the year. And the first thing that Grandma would say, my mom, when he would go into her house is, "Benjamin, you want an ice pop?" Right?
Oh, yes. You always had to make sure that, I was well fed. And a little ice pop was a little splurge from the grandparents.
Yeah. And then the graham crackers, but it was very cute because it was 3 things. And the lima beans.
And the lima beans, always. And at first I didn't like them.
Yeah.
I'd put way too much salt on them. But, over the years, I think as I've grown in the traditional foods movement, I've become more partial to lima beans.
That's funny. All righty, well, you got that whisked together. Now what we're going to do is, so basically I've just taken that 1 stick of butter, it's on the chili side, and I've just cubed it into little pieces, and we're going to go ahead and put this into our dough, or into our flour. We're going to make our dough. And all you want to do is you can just do this with clean hands. You can go right in. And that's the nice thing about this recipe. You don't need any, special equipment or mixers or anything like this. This is very easy to do by hand. And this is fun to do with kids because like Play-Doh or anything like that, they're going to get their hands in here and start working the butter into the flour. So you can be in charge of that. And this is something I know you would have very much loved doing as a kid, right?
Indeed.
And all we're going to do is just keep working that until it becomes looking like sand. That's the texture that you want it to look like. And so it's a lot of fun. You can just get in there and there's really it's not an exact science, right? I think pretty much everything we did in the kitchen really never had an exact science.
Just, the general idea, and hope for the best.
Yeah, hope for the best, right? And so just get in there and just keep working it. And you don't have to worry, this is not like making a pie crust. So you don't have to worry about trying to keep the butter cold or anything like that. It just works a little easier when it first goes in when it's cold. And then you just keep mixing it until you have something that looks like sand. Well, Ben's worked this in beautifully and it looks really nice, just like sand. It's exactly what we're looking for. Now, the next thing, and what would you say? It took 30 seconds, maybe, no more than that. Now what we're going to do is take 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and we're going to go ahead and add that into our dough in the making here. Well, we've got the vanilla extract in there, and now we're going to go ahead and add in our pourable honey. So I'm just getting the last of this honey in here. And I know Ben and I have shared with you in previous videos that Ben has dyslexia. And growing up, he had a lot of reading therapy and whatnot. He's doing great now as a grown man. But he has a very cute story to share with you about it was like a plastic container. I think it looked like a bear.
Yeah.
But it had a label on it.
A little sticker.
Yeah, a sticker, that's right.
That I thought said low calorie. And I go and I ask Mom, I say, "Boy, how do they make low-calorie honey?" And she says, "What?" And looks at it and then laughs a little bit, and it's local. And ever since then, I always joke with her, if I'm getting honey at the store or something, I say, "Oh, Mother, I'm getting some of that low-calorie honey." Always a funny memory.
Yeah, we always have a good memory about that.
Yeah, you always had a lot of honey. Manuka.
Manuka honey.
And all the special honeys.
And God bless you, because that has such a strong flavor. If you've ever had Manuka honey, it's very medicinal. And it has almost somewhat a little bit of a medicinal flavor. But as adults...
Very much so.
Yeah, but as adults, our palates they change over time, and we don't notice as strong flavors as maybe young children do. And you might have been like 3 or 4, and I think we were going into cold and flu season,
yeah.
and I was saying, okay, you got to take a little teaspoon of this Manuka honey every day. And Benjamin's like, oh, honey, sure, I love honey. And I give you the Manuka honey, and you were like, oh, Mom, okay.
No, but it definitely seems like it's good for you.
Oh, yeah. Now what Ben's going to do is sort of try to bury the honey, so to speak, so it's not too sticky on his hands. And then he's going to start working this as closely as he can get it into some type of dough. And you may find that it'll be dry, or it may come together very easily for you. So much has to do with what the conditions are in your kitchen, what the weather is like outside. I mean, it's often, whenever you're dealing with anything that you're baking, there's always variables. So what I like to do is keep a little milk handy, and as he's working this and pulling this dough together, we're going to add in a little milk, like a teaspoon or a tablespoon at a time. We don't need to overdo. We just want to get this to where it forms a ball and it feels very malleable, easy to shape. Well, the dough is coming together nicely. It's a scotch dry, so we're going to add about a tablespoon of milk. And in the recipe, what I say is to have about a 1/4 cup of milk on hand. Chances are you're not going to need any more than a 1/4 cup. And this is just a whole milk, but you can certainly use an alternative if you want. If you just want to use water, if you don't have any milk on hand, that's fine. I like to always use whole milk, just makes everything a little richer in flavor. But I'm going to go ahead and just pour this right into the batter in which Ben has been working with, or the dough, and he'll just keep working that together until we can get the whole thing to hold together in a ball. Well, Ben's worked this into a lovely piece of dough. Now what we're going to do is divide this into 2 pieces and just go ahead, and it's not an exact science, so I don't want you to worry about it. You just divide it into what you think is about 2 relatively even pieces, but again, it doesn't have to be exact. And we're going to take 1 piece, we're going to put it down on plastic wrap in the middle, and we're going to go ahead and flatten that a bit, and we're just going to chill this dough. The reason that we're going to chill it for about 30 minutes is that it makes it a lot easier to roll out. It's still like a little soft and sticky, which is what you want, but once we go to roll it out, if we've chilled it a bit, it's just going to make life a little easy. So you did a great job,
thank you.
as always.
Oh, you're very kind.
Alrighty, well, we will go ahead and put these 2 pieces in the fridge, and then we'll get them to chill a bit and come back and show you how we roll them out. Now, while our graham cracker dough is cooling, I just want to mention that I created a curriculum to go along with my cookbook, and it actually contains a lesson plan on showing children how to make these graham crackers and learn a lot of other things along the way to really bring things like history, math, and science alive. This curriculum is completely free. It's over 250 pages, no email required. You can download it over on my website, and I'll put a link in the description as well as in the pinned comment. But as Benjamin knows, I'm very passionate about teaching traditional skills, traditional kitchen skills, traditional food skills to children, as any younger generation, because we want to preserve these skills. Because if we preserve these skills in younger generations, we're teaching those people how to be self-sufficient in the kitchen. And I think this is a really important skill to learn. So be sure to check this out. It's got 14 chapters to it that coordinate with the 14 chapters in my cookbook. Each chapter is divided into 3 lesson plans, one for grades K through 4, the other for grades 5 through 8, and then the 3rd lesson plan for grades 9 through 12. But all the lesson plans work really well together if you're educating multiple age groups. So definitely go ahead and check out that link. This can be used by homeschoolers. It can be used by parents who send their children outside the home for their education. You can use this on the weekends, make a little summer program about it. Your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews can all learn from this. You can even do like a little community program. Some of you have shared that you're going to be doing a community program for children in your area using this lesson plan. So it really warms my heart to know that We're all working to teach, and keep these traditional food skills alive. So be sure to check the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. It's completely free, no email required. Download as many copies as you want. Share with friends and family. It's very important to me, and it brings a lot of joy to me knowing that so many of you have really enjoyed my cookbook, and you found it to be, as I shared with you, a manual for creating a traditional foods kitchen. It's a lot more than just recipes. It's a manual that walks you through step by step how to make traditional foods and then how to use those foods to create meals. So be sure to check out the lesson plan. Be sure to check out my cookbook. What we're going to do now is get some parchment paper. I have a piece here that's cut to the size of a half-sheet pan. And this is an unbleached parchment paper, and I've dusted it with a little bit of whole wheat flour. Also, too, Ben will show you, there's not just the unbleached ones that are pre-cut. This is one that just comes on a roll. They're very easy to find these at your grocery store. And then what I do is just cut them to size to fit my baking sheet. So either or, whatever you have will work, but parchment paper will make this job a lot easier. So then we're going to go ahead and take our disc that's been chilling for about 30 minutes in the fridge. Then we're going to take, I've got some whole wheat flour here. Yes, H-E-B. Those of you in Central Texas know it's my favorite grocery store. Then we're just going to go ahead and pat some, we're going to rub a little flour on there, and then I'll let Ben go ahead and just start flattening it. What I like to do is just try to flatten it a little with our hand before we actually put the second piece of parchment paper on top. Next, we're going to take our next sheet of parchment paper and we're going to put this right on top. Then we're going to take a rolling pin and we're going to roll this dough out so that it comes within an inch of the border of the parchment paper. Now, basically what that's going to do is make sure that this dough is rolled out to a quarter inch thickness. And that's important because you want these to be nice and crisp. That's sort of the traditional measurement, a quarter inch, for when you're making rolled cookies like this. Graham crackers are a dough that we're going to roll out. And the nice thing about using this parchment paper that's basically the size of a half-sheet pan is that it gives you more or less the exact thickness you need by rolling it out and just coming within 1 inch of the edge of the paper. Now, if you bake a lot of cookies, you can certainly use a rolling pin like this that has these little like raised areas on the end. Sometimes if you just have a rolling pin like this, you can buy little discs that you push right onto your rolling pin that measure a quarter inch, a half inch, an inch, so on and so forth. And if you make a lot of cookies and you maybe kind of new to it and you're not quite sure exactly if you've got the right thickness, or you don't want to necessarily pull out a ruler and try to measure a quarter inch, this type of rolling pin will allow you to perfectly roll out your dough. And what will happen is when this hits the bottom, you'll know that you're at a quarter inch. So that's, if you've ever wondered, if you've seen these rolling pins and you've ever wondered why they're made that way, now you know. But we're just going to go ahead and use this one because it's very easy. We're just going to roll our dough till it's about an inch or so from the rim of the paper. And I'll let Ben take over and do the rolling. Well, Ben's done a great job rolling out our dough. And now the easy part. All we need to do is pick up the parchment paper. And that's why we do this between two pieces of parchment paper. It really makes life easy. And we're just going to go ahead and stick this in the fridge. Just let it chill up a little before we remove the parchment paper and then score it into graham crackers. And in the interim, I'm going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, we've got this out of the refrigerator. It's chilled for a bit. We've pulled back our parchment paper. And now you have some options on how exactly you want to go ahead and score your graham crackers. If you want to keep this very rustic looking, you don't really need to trim up the edges, But if you want them to look just like they did in my cookbook, then you'll want to go ahead and trim up the edges. And we were just laughing because I was telling the fellas, well, they already knew this, but we were remembering the story when I had the editor, the photographer, and the food stylist here for a week who were taking all the pictures in my cookbook. And I think I was making these, I was making everything and trying to have as much ready as I could. Not things like the chicken and fish and the different dishes like that, but the baked goods I was trying to make in advance to make it easy for them so everything would be ready for them to photograph and style and whatnot. And we were laughing because I think I was actually making these graham crackers at about 2 o'clock in the morning because I was doing sourdough bread and a few other things. And so if I can do these at 2 o'clock in the morning, anybody can make these. But if you want, you can go ahead, and I find a pizza cutter, if you've got this pizza wheel, if you've got one of these, this works really great. If not, you can just take, a sharp knife and just clean up the edges. So that's what we'll go ahead and do. But now know that none of this goes to waste because you can just flatten these out. They won't look like graham crackers, but they'll be very tasty. You can just bake up your scraps. Now, once you clean up the edges, you're all ready to proceed with the next step. But don't worry, like you'll see my edge here might be a little uneven. It's not an exact science. And even if you want to leave the jagged edges, I'm fine with that too. Now, at this point, I am not a fuss budget. You will see recipes for graham crackers out there that people have such exact measurements so that they will look exactly like what you would be buying at the grocery store. I tend to wind up just doing more of a square, and I often won't even, this is a food safe ruler, but I often won't even use a ruler. I'll just kind of eyeball it. And I kind of like that because it's just a traditional foods, it's a traditional foods
Each
kitchen.
one's unique.
And each one is unique. And my mother would have never gone to such an exact process like this. She would have eyeballed it. So I tend to do the same. So basically what I try to do is, for the most part, I try to get about 12 squares out of each disc of dough. Now we've still got our other disc in the fridge, and Ben and I'll finish up with that later. But that's just so that you know, as an estimate, that's kind of why I like to do these videos for the recipes in my cookbook, to know that there's a lot of wiggle room and there's a lot of flexibility. And I hope I share a lot of these sort of notes in the book. But so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to eyeball it, and we're going to divide this into 12 squares. We've got our dough scored into 12 individual crackers, 12 graham crackers, and now Ben is going to go ahead and use a fork to basically put a bunch of little dots, so to speak, indentations in each cracker. And you can just go 1, 2, 3, and then or 4, whatever, and then go on to the other side and do another 3 or 4. Again, it's not an exact science. And you can let children do this, and as they're counting and maybe a little bit of math when you're deciding on how to divide the dough up into 12 crackers. All these little things can make it fun and exciting for them in a way to learn math that's related to food. But the reason that we do this, there is actually science behind this. The reason that we do this is by punching these little holes into the crackers. If you make pie crust, this might seem familiar to you. And this is what prevents the crackers from puffing up and allows them to be nice and crisp. So this way, they're really going to have that wonderful graham cracker consistency. Now that we've got punctures on all of the crackers, we're going to go ahead and mix our sugar and cinnamon together. And then we're going to go ahead and take our milk, and using a pastry brush, don't worry if you don't have this, you can use the back of a spoon, and we're just going to paint all of our crackers, and then we're going to mix them then we're going to top them, sprinkle the tops of the crackers with the cinnamon sugar. Well, Ben and I make a great team. I brushed them with the milk, and he sprinkled them with the cinnamon sugar. Now we're going to go ahead and just pop these on the middle rack in our preheated oven that we preheated at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And they basically bake up in about 10-12 minutes. Every oven's a little different. I highly recommend checking them at 10 minutes, and then we'll give them a taste. This holiday season, give the gift of stories and recipes with my new book, The Modern Pioneer Cookbook, available everywhere books are sold. Well, we just got these out of the oven and they look great. So what I like to do is just use my spatula just to kind of rescore them a little bit, and then we're going to transfer them to a cooling rack, let them cool a bit, and then we'll enjoy one. Well, we let our graham crackers cool a little bit, and I've got the official taste tester here. So enjoy, honey.
Alrighty, let's see. Boy, just like Grandma's.
Does that bring back some memories?
That brings back a lot of memories. They're good, and they really look like graham crackers. Boy.
Oh, I'm so glad you enjoy them. That's wonderful. Well, they came out great because I had a great chef here with me.
Well, we have the expert.
Now, if you'd like the recipe, you can get it in my new book, The Modern Pioneer Cookbook, or print it out on my website, marysnest.com. And in the meantime, be sure to click on this playlist over here where I have a whole host of recipes, many from the book and additional ones as well, all about creating a traditional foods kitchen. And we'll see you over there in our Texas
Hill Country Kitchen.
Love and God bless.